Hi witches! So today we are kind of continuing our conversation about Yule, or I guess turning our conversation to Yule, because it is coming up next week and it is one of like the most easily celebrated holidays as a pagan person. So I really want to devote like a lot of time to that, just for any witches who may be in the broom closet, not be able to practice as openly as they would like. It's easy to kind of incorporate into your regular holiday stuff. So, today we're going to be talking a little bit about deities that are associated with Yule. So I'm going to just touch on a couple of them. I do want to say overarchingly, like if you go back to the video that we were talking about the crone goddesses, crone goddesses are also kind of associated with this time of year as well. More so I feel like with Samhain, but also I think you can definitely give some time to those deities during Yule as well, because we're in the darkest part of the year. The crone is really associated with that archetype of winter, so just wanted to mention that as well. The first deity that I want to talk to you about today is a sun goddess, and her name is Amaterasu, and she comes from Japanese mythology. So in Japan, and especially in feudal Japan, worshippers of this goddess, the sun goddess, believe that she slept during the cold months, and then at the very like peak of winter, midwinter, the winter solstice, Yule time for us, the other gods woke her up and she returned to the world after seeing how desolate it was and how sad it was. So you can see a lot of imagery similar to that in a lot of the other deities that we're going to talk about today. The next deity is Baldor, who we talked about during our episode on mistletoe. If you haven't seen that, you should definitely check it out. As we know from our other video, Baldor was known as Baldor the Beautiful. He was beloved by Norse people, Norse pagans, I suppose, for, years and years. His mother was named Frigga, or Frigg, and she loved her son so much, she asked all of the things in nature, whether it was growing on the ground or in the water, whatever it was, she asked them to promise not to hurt her son Baldor, but unfortunately she overlooked mistletoe because it's a parasitic plant. It doesn't grow in the ground necessarily, but it does grow on a tree. And Loki, the trickster god of Norse mythology, he noticed that she had forgotten mistletoe and used that to create a spear or an arrow of some kind, and gave that to Baldor's blind brother, who killed him with that weapon. As prior to that, all the gods were like throwing things at him, using Baldor for target practice since he was essentially invincible, except for mistletoe. So yeah, another really fascinating story all about herb lore. I think that's a really interesting one. And if you are a Norse pagan, if I got anything wrong, just let me know and I will correct it, of course. The next goddess I wanted to talk to you guys about is Bona Dea, who is a Roman fertility goddess. She is she's a goddess who was only worshipped by women. And there was a festival in her honor in December around this time. So a lot of the rituals were very secretive. A lot of things, men were forbidden from participating in. So if you work with this goddess, this deity, I wowould love to hear more about that. I personally don't, but I think it's a very interesting kind of niche, I guess, deity, so it's neat. The next deity / entity that I really wanted to talk about was the Cailleach, and I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong, and I'm really sorry, I tried. But basically this goddess, I guess, so it's kind of hard, like in some stories I see her referred to as like Fae, but also as a goddess, which is similar to the Morrigan. So I'm not really 100%, I haven't done as much research on this figure in mythology as I have with my matron, the Morrigan, but she's kind of seen as like this hag or like this crone, and that aspect of the triple goddess, right? So you have the maiden, the mother, and the crone. She rules she's at the height of her power between Samhain and Beltane, so like kind of the darker half of the year, and is seen in both Scottish and Irish mythology. So that is something that I am endeavoring to learn more about this year. The next deity that I wanted to talk to you about comes from Greek mythology, and that is Dionysus. And I know you're about to say, wait, I thought he was associated with vegetation and like orgies and stuff. And I'm like, yes, technically correct. Yes, that is one aspect of it. But if you think about the holiday season, I think one of the things that I really, like one of the first things that I think about are the holiday parties. And what do you drink at parties? Wine. And who is the god of wine? Dionysus. There's actually a festival called Brumalia that is held every December in his honor. And it actually was so popular that the Romans adopted it with their version of Dionysus, Bacchus. So that's where you get Bacchanalia. So yes, there's like a lot of interesting history and a lot of things that we talk about today. So yes. Following that, we have the Holly King, who comes from, he's Celtic, but like more British Celtic, like the British Isles. He's really similar to kind of like the Green Man figure, and we see him a lot, like featured very prominently in modern Wicca. So one of the things that I learned as a Wiccan is that there is this like mythology of the Oak King and the Holly King battling each other for control during the year. So we have the Holly King that reigns from the summer solstice to the winter solstice, and then the Oak King that reigns essentially from the winter solstice to the summer solstice. So that kind of is a way to explain the way the sun, I guess, or like the way the days lengthen and shorten, if that makes sense. So the Holly King is said to defeat the Oak King on the summer solstice. He dies, and as such the light and sun leave the world until he is reborn on the winter solstice and reclaims power during Beltane. So that is, you know, the whole kind of story behind the Wheel of the Year if you're going at it from a Wiccan perspective usually. So there's that. Moving right along, we actually have another solar deity coming from the Egyptian pantheon, and that is Horus. And as with Horus, we also have Ra, who is another one of the Egyptian sun deities. When we think about Egyptian mythology, we have to remember that this civilization lasted for like 2,000 years. So there's a lot of changing mythology, and different deities take on different aspects. So that's kind of like, for example, we see Osiris coming in after Anubis. So Anubis was kind of like seen for a while, at least, as like the god of the dead. Then Osiris came into popular mythology, I assume, as the eons went by. And Anubis became more of the deity associated with embalming and funerary rites versus actual death. So the same kind of thing happened with Horus versus Ra. But both of them are sun gods. And my camera cut off on me, and I'm not sure where we stopped, so we're just gonna start up again with the next deity. Super sorry guys, technical difficulties. My life is a nightmare. Anyways, the next deity that I wanted to talk to you guys about is Odin. He's actually kind of seen as like the floor figure for Santa Claus. So he was known by Norse pagans to go and leave gifts for young children who were good during this time of year, which I can imagine is like very stressful for parents, like I was talking about. Like, it's dark, they can't just go outside, there's wolves. But he had a magical flying horse. I believe its name was Sleipnir, and this is kind of like where we see the reindeer like legend coming to be. So people believe that like the Saint Nicholas, like the saint, the Christian saint, and Odin were kind of transformed into this Father Christmas figure. But again, more on that next week. Finally, the last deity that I want to talk about is Saturn, who is like the Roman equivalent of Zeus, basically. But every December, Romans threw this amazing party called Saturnalia, and it was basically just like this week-long festival of debauchery, gambling, all sorts of good stuff, you know, like getting into the Christmas season, right? Basically, it was just like a huge party, a huge celebration to kind of light up winter time and make it a little bit less awful. So those are just some deities that are associated with Yule. Again, if you do work with deities, I find it's fine to like honor them at any point in the year. Let the holiday like denote who you work with as a deity working witch. So anyways, I hope that was kind of informative, fun to talk about, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.